If I asked you to picture art in Beijing, you probably think of the Forbidden City with its priceless paintings, ancient ceramics. However, there's great contemporary art to be found in Beijing, and sometimes the museums housing them are works of art themselves. And truth is, we need art now more than ever, what with the year 2020 having been marked by suffering and upheaval. And that's why in this episode of Travelogue, I'll be taking you to some of the best contemporary art museums that Beijing has to offer.
To do that, we'll be travelling to the suburbs of the Chinese capital. Our first stop is something of a photographer's paradise.
This is the Red Brick Art Museum. It's actually one of the best contemporary art museums in Beijing. Regularly holds world-class exhibitions, even has permanent installations from artists like Olafur Eliasson and Dan Graham. But actually the real exhibit is this museum itself, because it's built as a contemporary version of the classical Chinese garden.
The Red Brick Museum is located an hour's drive north from central Beijing. I've asked my architect friend Dingni to show me around. She explains that in a traditional Chinese courtyard residence, the house and garden are connected, so entering the museum is like entering a house.
From here you see a really big, huge wall, right? That is small circle as the entrance. In order to make you feel relaxed, informal, so they get everything small in the beginning and they're gonna open up later on.
It's as if you're entering a new world, and you're immediately drawn to the atrium in the centre.
So this is what, like the living room? Or?
It's actually like a ceremony space, and then it's also reflects the Chinese courtyard, the yard in the centre.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like a campsite.
It's pretty obvious how this museum gets its name. The use of red bricks everywhere lends it a sense of uniformity, and the bricks are used to create complex geometric shapes that look like something out of an MC Escher picture. With all these frames and walkways constantly changing your perspective, it can get quite dizzying.
I'm already kind of lost, to be honest.
When you see the red brick, it's kind of the exhibition hall, and when you see this grey brick, it's representing the garden. So when you see the contrast, which means that you're changing the zones.
So it's like a hint.
Yeah.
So this is the garden then? Just like this?
Actually, it's a division between the museum and the garden. So when you see the water, it's kind of divided two parts. And then when we're walking on this bridge, it's kind of represented the corridor in Chinese garden. And now you see this frame, and each one are different. What behind it is a new world.
The garden's actually not that big, but these narrow alleys make it seem like you're lost in a vast labyrinth.
Are you sure this is a part of the garden?
Of course.
Okay.
It's trying to get you lost inside.
Most people hate being lost.
And that's the excitement part of the traditional Chinese garden.
What, to enjoy being lost?
Yeah.
Sudden opening.
There's this constant contraction and expansion of your field of vision. The overall effect is that you're never bored walking through this garden.
I think what's also quite interesting is that maybe in a Western garden, it feels like often it's vast. The Chinese garden, I don't know, it almost feels like feminine because it's small, it's delicate, and it makes you find little surprises at every corner.
The Chinese garden, they have several layers, so you can't recognize where you are. It's not about the ending of the journey, but the experience and the time you're spending on your journey, a journey to discover yourself.
In a way, that's what Red Brick's current exhibition is about. Entitled 2020 Plus, the works here try to help us understand and make sense of this difficult year. I particularly like this video series. It's called I Will Die, and the artist filmed almost 1,000 people saying this phrase.
It's an interesting piece of art. I mean, we all know we're going to die. It's a fact, isn't it? But especially this year when we're faced with so much death and suffering, and we most likely have friends and family who have been affected by the coronavirus, it just becomes that much more solid our mortality.
A few pieces in this exhibit explore the theme of our collective unconscious, how we often just blindly follow in the footsteps of everyone else. Sometimes profound reflections on life can be a rich source of inspiration for artists. This piece is by the late Chen Zhen, who created crystal sculptures of his organs.
他当时为什么是要做这个作品？
也是陈真老师创作于2000年的，2000年也是他生命的最后一年。他可能更多的思考的是他自己本身的生命以及死亡对他来讲的这样的一个意义。
看着这个作品，生命是很美，但是非常脆弱。
其实我们也是希望通过这些艺术作品，能够引起更多观众对于自我的这样的一个思考，或者说是对于人类与自然这样的一个关系的思考。
These works of art challenge our pre-existing beliefs. What is true and what is false depends on where you're standing.
本来我们可能会觉得线球这种东西是比较柔软，但是通过它体量的这样的一个摆放以及这样放射状的这样的一个形态，其实整个线球是呈现一种攻击的这样的一个态势。发光的这样的一个
对，真白应该是挺尖的。
但是通过这样密集的这样的一个摆放以及灯光的照射，呈现这种闪闪发光的状态，有些观众他可能会觉得，哎，像是这种皮草啊、皮毛啊这种柔软的质感。对。
I feel like every artwork here is trying to make us look from a different perspective. To make us think about the status quo and how easily it can be changed. Through their works, the artists are trying to have a conversation with us. But even if we don't understand what they're trying to say, sometimes viewing art helps us realize things about ourselves.
I guess the point of this is to show that we too will disappear and our actions and deeds might be recorded for a while, but you know, life is impermanent, isn't it?